Well, last time I had all my MST3K DVDs out in front of me, but this series was released digitally. So... there we go.
There were some movies, terrible movies, movies so awful, no one would touch. Then came a Matthew, sad little Matthew. Matthew decided these movies to watch. For every good movie, there's at least 10 bad. Matthew had to drag himself through the crap to find the worst ones there are to be had.
Today's episode, Mystery Science Theater 3000, The Return.
As promised, here's my review of MST3K The Return. From like 4 months ago. Dude, come on, this is like 14 episodes, they're an hour and a half each, it's like 22 hours worth of footage I gotta go through. I have a life. More or less.
In late 2016, Mystery Science Theater 3000 creator Joel Hodgson announced that MST3K would be coming back with a Kickstarter page to help fund. A Kickstarter page that broke Kickstarter records, mind you. And so, Mystery Science Theater 3000 The Return was released on Netflix in April of 2017. There are a lot of good things and a few more mixed things to say, so let me start with my biggest complaint about the new series. The fact that it's MST3K at all. MST3K is kind of an unprecedented show. There's never been a show like it. Sure, there are similar shows online now, but as far as TV goes, MST3K was one of a kind. I'd be really interested to see what this same concept would be like with new characters and a new setup. You've got Joel Hodgson, so the MST3K fans would follow you anyway, so it's sort of win-win. Make a good show and it'll stand on its own. Make a bad show and at least you didn't piss off the fanboys. They sort of remedy this by calling it MST3K The Return, which made a lot of things easier to accept as being part of a new series, but I am kinda disappointed that it's the same show again. Luckily the show was pretty good, so let's dive into the best part of the show, the cast. And the best part of the cast, Patton Oswalt as TV's son of TV's Frank. Has there ever been better casting? It's like making Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark. It was almost inevitable. And hey, I heard Patton Oswalt recently got engaged. Congrats, celebrity person who will never watch this video.
Complete aside, but you think Patton Oswalt knows about rat-tattooing? I mean, he's on MST3K, and he had an old stand-up bit about Deathbed, the bed that eats, so clearly he's in the know about bad movies.
Joining Oswalt to complete the pair of Mads is Felicia Day as Kinga Forrester.
I'm gonna go ahead and pretend her middle name is Dora.
Day is great in this show. She brings just the right amount of camp to make the character funny without overdoing it. But I'm just gonna say it, she's way too attractive for me to believe she's related to this guy. Maybe this guy, but not this guy. Not that I think Dr. Forrester or TV's Frank would or even could have children unless they had some home life they never mentioned in the original show, but we'll get to the show's continuity later. For now, let's talk about the bots. Gypsy is the most drastically different, and this is the better Gypsy. I liked the old Gypsy. Her cluelessness played well off the bot's overconfident insanity. But this Gypsy feels competent, like she could actually do something. Hell, just listen to her voices and the difference is immediately clear.
Bro?
Yes?
I don't get you.
Oh, right. Yeah, the higher functions of the ship still need my constant attention or we'll die horribly. Be seeing y'all.
My one gripe is that once or twice an episode, Gypsy will come into the theaters, say one line, and leave. And apart from one line in Star Crash, there's really no reason Gypsy specifically had to say those lines. Anyone could have said it. If you want Gypsy to riff with the guys, just have her riff with the guys. I'm okay with that. This just seems odd and distracting. In fact, moving forward, you'll find most of my gripes aren't necessarily bad. They're just distracting things that could easily be fixed. Crow is voiced by Hampton Yount. Yount. Look, I had to look up how to pronounce the original Crow's last name, and I'm pretty sure I still got it wrong. I really can't make fun of anyone's name. And remember what I said about how I didn't really like Bill Corbett as Crow, but probably just because I was being a butthurt fanboy? Well, Yunt basically confirms that. He and Corbett are basically equal, and I liked him, so I guess Corbett didn't ruin my childhood. Worth a mention, before this, Yunt was a writer on Season 4 of The Eric Andre Show, so thanks for the quality memeage there, Hampton.
Objective quality. All memes are trash.
And the final bot, Baron Vaughn as Tom Servo, whom I have less polite things to say about. See, Kevin Murphy and even J. Elvis Weinstein brought a level of undue gravitas to the character, backing up his complete overconfidence. Vaughn sounds like he's faking it, like he's trying to sound important and arrogant rather than just naturally sounding that way. And that's not nearly as funny. He is at least a funny person. I wouldn't say otherwise about anyone on this show, but he wouldn't be my first choice for Tom. And of course, there's the host, Jonah Heston, played by Jonah Ray of the Nerdist fame. And saying Jonah's the worst host is like saying Day of the Dead isn't as good as Night or Dawn. Like, yeah, I guess, but they're still great, so shut up. You know, I wrote that line before Romero died, and now I just feel sad. Give me a minute. Much like how I said Joel and Mike were their own characters, Jonah is very much his own character too. While Joel intervened in a lot of the bots' antics and Mike just got annoyed by them, Jonah seems almost amused by them, even going so far as to egg them on. Which feels appropriate given that he's a fan of the show experiencing it firsthand. This is very much what I suspect the real Jonah's reaction would be to all of this. If I had one gripe about him, I'd say he leans a little too far towards Joel. In fact, the whole show kinda does. I guess it makes sense considering it was Joel who orchestrated the whole thing, but a reboot like this should really pull from all interpretations equally rather than mostly focusing on one with only brief nods to the other.
We really were hoping for more of a combination of Joel and Mike, which I think would be a lot like TJ Miller.
I don't know, maybe that's just me. The show does manage to be its own thing for the most part. The show also features guest appearances, something that didn't really happen in the old show a lot. They had Leonard Maltin on, and I think some Minnesota football player, but that's it really. But I can accept the guests in this new version because 1, I'm not a fucking stickler for tradition, and 2, they actually made a joke about it.
The new MST3K isn't about ideas or making things. It's about sheer star power.
But going back to things that are just oddly distracting, none of the guests appear on set with the other actors. They just talk directly into the camera at each other the way YouTubers usually do.
Right, Eddie?
Right.
Wouldn't it be cooler to have them, actually interact with the characters firsthand? In particular, when the Mads from the end of Season 10 show up, Professor Bobo attempts to comb fleas out of Max's hair digitally? Wouldn't it be funnier if he was actually there picking fleas out of Max's hair? Seems like such an odd choice. Maybe it has something to do with scheduling conflicts, but you'd think if you could get Jerry Seinfeld to be on your show, you'd actually have someone on set to act with him. Side note, holy crap, Mark Hamill is good. Can he get like an Emmy nomination for a cameo on a Netflix show? 'Cause he deserves it. Let's talk about the show's aesthetic. I mentioned I didn't like the sleek, high-budget design of the movie, and moving to Netflix and HD didn't really bode well with me, but they managed to keep the Satellite of Love very small and intimate, while the Mads lair, Moon 13, got the huge revamping, which is exactly where newer, high-budget sets should go. The bots now function better and have a lot more moving parts. That's not necessarily something I felt the show needed, but it wasn't something I minded either. What I kinda did mind was the joke of the show being recorded on liquid video, which caused bubbles to rise up only when it's convenient for the shot. Like if the shot goes too long and they need to cut, or if the bots have to do something they can't actually do. Again, today's word of the day is distracting, and this way more so than anything else. You guys realize there's 2 sets of characters you could cut to.
Like, look at Eddie.
Wait, what?
And now I have a mustache.
I'm not even sure I get the joke. It just seems like a really contrived way to make filming easier. And let's talk about my final gripe, the continuity. MST3K always had a somewhat tight continuity, by which I mean it didn't always make sense, but there was always a bridge from one season to the next. This series doesn't ignore the continuity, it avoids talking about it even when it's brought into direct question. Like a college student whose parents just asked if he drinks. On the one hand, I can kind of respect that, like a nod to the audience to say, just don't worry about it, but really, would it have been that hard? At the end of the last series, the satellite of love burned up in Earth's atmosphere, and Crow and Tom moved in with Mike and have presumably been living out their days in a quiet Minnesota town ever since. So, is this a new satellite? Are these the same Tom and Crow, or have they been built from parts from the new satellite? Maybe this takes place in that 500-year interim between Season 7 and Season 8. But then Pearl and the gang shows up in their van, suggesting this is after that, although last we saw of Pearl and the gang, they had abandoned their van in favor of Pearl's Earth Castle. Plus, they did time travel a bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and say this fits somewhere between Season 7 and Season 8. Finally, there's the film selection, which can often make or break an episode. There's a reason episodes like Manos and Hobgoblins are so memorable, while episodes like Clonus the Parts Horror are easier to forget. With the jump to HD, the films they're riffing actually ended up being higher quality than a lot of the old movies, and most of the time I could actually follow the plot. I do tend to enjoy the films a bit more when I can understand the story. Not that there weren't movies this season where I didn't understand the story, like Cry Wilderness, or even episodes where the movie didn't even have a story. Carnival Magic. Seriously, Carnival Magic was so bad I barely wanted to finish the episode. I can't really say they've struck gold yet, but they've certainly struck silver with a few of these movies, especially with Star Crash.
A film I kind of wanted to review this December when the new Star Wars comes out, but these things happen.
And there's certainly a lot more to praise it for. It's very musical, much like its predecessor, the humor is really good, and it captures the spirit of the original fairly well. In the end, what MST3K The Return Season 1 reminds me of the most is MST3K Season 1. They haven't quite figured out what they want the show to be, but with each passing episode they get better and better, and a second season will likely see the show come into its own. Most of the problems I mentioned could easily be fixed moving forward, and I for one am excited to see where this series will go.
So to all those involved, I say congratulations, and I look forward to the not-so-distant future of MST3K.
Watch out for snakes.
He said the thing.
I was watching that episode alone in my room, and I still audibly said, he said the thing.